Welcome to this workshop. So today we're going to do a scientific assessment that is often used in clinical settings, as well as a few other worksheets that I have specifically prepared for you so that you can just become more aware of your sexual breaks versus accelerators. And this is a casual exercise. Remember that for this, the actual numbers that you get aren't that important, but it's actually the insights that you extract from them that are much more valuable. And so we're going to start with a sexual empowerment worksheet that I put together that's inspired by Layla Martin's work. And then we're going to go into a stressors worksheet because oftentimes when you aren't super happy with your sex life or intimate life with your partner or even with yourself. So again, this is actually for both couples or singles. So if you are not currently in a relationship, this can be a really beautiful way for you to assess how you can add more pleasure into your life in general, but also make sure that you're on top of your self-pleasure practice, which is so important for your health overall. And so we'll start with that sexual empowerment worksheet. Then we're going to move on to a sexual stressors worksheet. So what stress in your life can you tackle and minimize, and what can you actually physically, tangibly do about minimizing the stress in your life? Because stress impacts your arousal, your sexual desire, your willingness to take care of yourself. And then we're going to go into a sexual context worksheet where we're going to map out what happened during a really delicious sexual or intimate encounter and map the environmental factors that made that optimal. And then we're going to look at a sexual or intimate encounter that maybe wasn't ideal, not necessarily a bad one, but one that could be better, and map the environmental or physical factors that made that less ideal to help you get an understanding of, again, what can you do in the future to optimize your life in intimacy, love, and creativity. And then lastly, we're going to go into that scientific assessment, a simpler version of that that's actually taken from Emily Nagoski's beautiful book, which is called Come As You Are. I highly recommend that people read this, especially if you have a pussy. I find it is super beautiful for the people that I partner with and work with to read in tandem with this kind of expansive journey in intimacy, love, and relationships. So without further ado, let's get into it. What I've done in the past in these workshops is share my screen, and I invite you to follow along as best suits you, right? So some people might simply want to journal and pull up their own notes. If you want to get more technical with it, you can download the worksheets. I just posted them in the Pleasure Hacking group here on Telegram. And if you're watching this past the recording, I'll post them in the comments so you can download them. And if you have preview, you can annotate and then save it. Or you can open Acrobat or whatever other tools you have. But just know, this is not a thing where, if you don't have the right tool set, don't let that limit you. Again, this is mainly a reflection exercise. So reflect, take a few deeper breaths, think about what comes up for you, journal, or share that with me here. I highly invite you to, speak up in this workshop. This is meant to be, again, a casual discussion. If you feel too shy, you can always DM me and I can respond to things if you want to stay anonymous. Okay, so let's get into this. So I'm going to share my screen. This is the first time I'm doing this on Telegram, so let's see how this works. I am sharing my screen. Can you see it though? Can someone tell me if they can see my screen? Interesting. Let me try one more time. Oh, how about this? Yeah, there we go. Beautiful. Okay, so now you should see my screen. So yeah, this is an order of the links that I sent in the pleasure hacking group. And so this is my own worksheet. You don't need to, again, enter anything here. This is just open-ended questions. So I invite you to maybe open it up on a tab and then again, journal. And the task here is, right, imagine yourself today in the following areas of your life and rank how empowered you feel in each of these. And with any of these quizzes, these can be hard. I invite you to just go with your gut instinct. So your first response is usually the one that is easier to work with and tells you, instead of the body tells you more often, right, than you going into analysis paralysis with your mind. So the first thing that comes to you, I invite you to just write it down and go with that. Don't overthink it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. This is just tools, take them or leave them. And so something that can be helpful though is consider the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, energetic, and physical resources that you have to express your desires and shape your reality in a way that reflects your own deep truth and vision. Because the way that I see it, empowerment, after all, is you making choices over and over again that are in alignment with your deeper truth and acting according to it. And so the more you are able to do that, the more empowered you feel, right? The more your inner desires match up with your actions, the more empowered you feel. So let's see here. So the first thing is practicing safe sex. And one is, I have no resource or power in this area at all. And 5 is, I am fully powerful in this area and have all the resources I need to fully express my desires and shape reality in a way that reflects my own deep truth and vision. And remember, you can always go back to these or pause if I'm moving too fast. I'm going to move on to the next one. This one is expressing your boundaries. Are you empowered? Do you feel strong? How often do you feel that you are able to express when a boundary is about to be broken or prevent that from happening, speaking up before? And then asking for and creating the sex life I desire. So how empowered do you feel in sharing your deepest fantasies, your deepest truth in intimacy, love, and relationship? And again, going with your first gut instinct is good here. You can always use this as a tool a couple of months down the line and see if you react differently, if you've progressed. But this is just a way for you to kind of jot down some numbers, jot down some thoughts, and realize where you might have some gaps that you want to work on. Owning your sexuality. So what do we mean by that? It can be interpreted openly as well, but feeling that your sexuality is yours and that you're not like maybe faking it or trying to be someone else or trying to, yeah, fit into certain boxes. Connecting to your sexuality. So, do you feel like you're suppressing it? Do you feel like you need to hide it in certain situations where it might not be necessary? Of course, there are always times where it's more or less appropriate to share your sexuality, but how do you relate to connecting to your sexuality? Maybe it's hard for you to actually connect with your turn on when you feel that the context and the timing is right. Celebrating your sexuality. So, this one I find is really important. Do you feel shame around your sexuality where maybe you feel that it should be actually celebrated instead? Expressing your voice while intimate. So, in general, sounding can be a way for you to move sexual energy in your body or process emotion much faster. And a lot of us have blocked our voices when it comes to sexuality or intimacy because that's something naturally that we were hiding as teenagers or kids. And so, something to be aware of is how vocal are you in intimate situations. And so, do you feel empowered to sound in all different ways? Or do you feel that maybe you have been programming yourself to sound in certain ways because maybe you find certain sounds to be sexy or not? How do you relate to this? And yeah, remember if this brings up some sensitive memories or something that feels emotional for you, that I am here for you. Feel free to always reach out in a message to me. You know, the nature of this work is quite sensitive. And so, yeah, I just want to offer and remind you that I am here. Okay, moving on. Loving my body. So, how empowered do you feel in bluntly and shamelessly loving your body? Showing off your body, sharing your body with loved ones in intimate situations. Yeah, and then just taking a moment to see um, if there were certain areas that you scored lower in or higher in, and maybe taking a moment after this session and even reflecting and journaling on this or some other time in the week. But yeah, I'm here to give you the tools, right, to look at things deeper. That's really what I'm here for. So sorry about that. All right, so moving on. The next one that I was hoping we could do was this one. So this is a stressors worksheet that is by Emily Nagoski, right? And again, you can find these on her website. They are part of the Come As You Are books and worksheets. And so, as I mentioned earlier, stress is one of the main reasons, maybe, why you are not having the intimacy life or sex life that you really desire. And so, it's really important to look at what makes you feel stressed in life. Right? And, you know, we all react to stress differently, right? Sometimes, if we'll get to that worksheet later, but just as an example, if you are, if you have get a high score on the sexual excitatory scales, you might even be using sex as a way to cope with stress. And that's also completely okay as long as we're aware of it, right? Stress or sex is actually a beautiful way to cope with stress, as long as, again, you're not kind of covering up anything, or bypassing any bigger issues there, or that you feel that it's an actual problem in your life, right? But sex is, Layla calls sex the active form of meditation, right? And so, it is a beautiful way to move stress through your body, which is why sexual practices can be so healing, which is why pleasure can be so healing. And so, again, just being aware of it here is the key. And so the first step in this worksheet is to just map out what are your top 3 stressors in your life right now. For me, for example, I'm moving right now. So going through huge transition, moving back to Europe after having been in the States for 13 years. That's stressful. I'm also moving all of my stuff into new platforms and moving all of my tools. That's also a huge stressor for me right now. So thinking about your current life situation, again, not overthinking it, but just listing the top 3 stressors. And then the next step is, how can I tell that I'm stressed? So what are the physical symptoms of stress? For example, digestive upset, jaw tension. Something that I talk about in my YouTube channel is that jaw tension is actually often related to your pelvic floor area. So oftentimes, you will be able to start sensing that your jaw is really stressed, and maybe that is a lack of being able to relax your pelvic floor area. And so often a solution there can actually be super healing self-pleasure practices that are more intentional, using a wand to actually relax the pelvic floor area, or using one of these balls to massage out and relax the muscles in your pelvic floor area. That's just a side note. But what lets you know that you're stressed? Maybe you forget to eat. Maybe you feel tension in your shoulders. And then emotional symptoms of stress. So do you maybe get more frustrated? And then the cognitive symptoms of stress. So and if this this is maybe not super clear, but I would fill it out for your top 3 stressors. So, and when you're feeling stressed, what helps, right? Is it going out for a walk? Is it being on top of your self-care routines or meditation practices? Is it staying hydrated? And then I invite you to pick one of those stressors above to think about what it would be like to increase your access to supporting this stressor. So as it says here, suppose hypothetically you decided you wanted to use this stress management strategy more. What might be some challenges you'd face if you tried to use this stress management strategy more? So for instance, for me, I'm going through huge transitions right now. I know that what helps is planning less things and putting less things on my schedule. And since that is a hard thing for me to do, what I could do is maybe take 10 minutes every Monday to actually say no to 2 things that I planned in. And then what are some things that you might do to minimize those barriers if you decided to try to use this stress management strategy more? And then how important is it for you to increase your access to the stress management strategy? And confidence, of course, plays a key role in if we can actually complete these. So, how confident do you feel? And what makes you feel more confident versus less confident? And then, given all of that, what's one thing that you can do today that can move you just one step closer in this stress management strategy? Oh, so that's the stress worksheet. Now, moving into the sexy context. So, I really like this one. So, we're first going to think about a positive sexual experience from your past. So, you can describe it with as much relevant key details as you can. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. And again, this can be with a partner or just maybe a self-pleasure practice that you found really juicy and nourishing. And then you're going to consider what aspects of that experience made it positive. And to the left here, you're going to consider the physical, the body image, mood, anxiety, distractibility, any worry about sexual functioning, or any other. then considering the partner characteristics. And again, if you were solo, this might not be as applicable, but you can still think about the smell or the mental state or your environment. And we'll get to the environment a little bit later, but and then we'll have the relationship characteristics, so trust or power dynamics. The emotional connection, feeling desired. Maybe at the time you had a lot of sex or very little sex. How does that impact? And then we have other life circumstances. So was it a holiday or an occasion? Was there work-related stress? What was going on in your life outside of it? And then we had things that you do. So maybe you had a fantasy, or maybe you had a lot of dirty talk, or maybe you had certain body parts that were touched during that session. And then just considering anything else that you like that made this experience super juicy for you. And taking a moment to take a few deeper breaths and look at all of this together. Okay, and then again, you can take more time here if you want, but whenever you feel ready, moving on to the not so sexy context. So again, not necessarily a bad experience, but just something that wasn't like super hot to you. And we've all had those sort of mediocre experiences. And yeah, just describing it and starting to recall it. Where were you? What did it feel like? What happened? And same here. So, what was going on with your physical health, your body image, your mood, anxiety, etc. And what about the partner characteristics? A lot of people get really turned on by smell. If that's something that you know, if certain smell turns you on, maybe you can consciously bring that up. And again, this is a beautiful exercise in trying to align and being more in sovereignty when it comes to your intimacy and your love life and your sexual life. Because, yeah, there are many factors that need to align for you to optimize your sexual life, both within yourself and with a partner in particular. Most of us have experienced that, one partner wants sex more often than the other, or vice versa, or that it's hard to initiate. And so doing these types of exercises can really help you be more aware of how your body reacts in certain situations, and either decide for yourself if you want to consciously bring up some of your things that you know that excite you sexually, be more vocal about them with your partner, or if you want to, for example, just, maybe not share that, that's completely fine as well, right? So maybe you want to share this with your partner beforehand. And again, if you need support in this, I invite you to reach out. Okay, so that's it for this one. There is more to this worksheet, but again, I invite you to kind of fill this out more on your own. The goal of this session is mainly to give you the tools. And so since this can feel like quite a lot, I invite you to kind of stand up at this point and maybe do a little shake in your body. Just kind of see what is coming up in your felt sense as we're talking about all of this. So if you're feeling any triggers, I invite you to take a deeper breath and close your eyes. And then just notice if there's any tension anywhere in your body. And again, we're going to talk the language of the body here. So not fear, not love, not anxiety, but physical sensations. So do you feel tension, heat, tingling, cold, numbness anywhere in your body, and stating that out aloud. So I feel a prickliness in my chest. I feel a tension in my pelvic floor area. I feel a warmth in my solar plexus. And then taking a few deeper breaths and finding those spots of tension, if you have any, or whatever you were feeling, and then just kind of moving or shaking a little bit more. Maybe letting go of the sound. Yeah. And then sitting down again, whenever you feel ready. We're going to move on to the success scale assessment. So again, this is not so much about the numbers. This is mainly about just being aware. Are you a person in general that needs to have everything kind of right for you to work and feel that deeper arousal? Or do you feel arousal very easily without maybe so many environmental contexts or contexts in general, or everything kind of feeling right in your body? And so I'm not a huge fan of all of these questions. So again, please take this with a grain of salt. This is meant to be an insightful exercise. But yeah, go with your gut feeling, jot down all of the numbers, and then in the end, we're just going to add them up. So this is about how much you identify this. Go with your gut instinct. So how much do you identify with? Unless things are just right, it is difficult for me to become sexually aroused. 0 being, this doesn't resonate at all. And 4 being, oh, this is exactly me. Jotting down a number. And then the second one being, when I am sexually aroused, the slightest thing can turn me off. So 0, no, that doesn't resonate at all. 4, that resonates fully. When you say that, I feel fully activated. Yes. And 2 being something in between there. And then the next one being, I have to trust a partner to become fully aroused. And this one is often, people get very different responses here. So for some people, trust is key. And for most of us, I would say maybe it is. But for some people, not trusting the person can be a kink, right? So really, there's no right or wrong way. Our sexuality is so different. And no matter what you're getting here in terms of the results, I just want to stress, like, you are not broken in any way, right? This is the beauty, right? Our sexuality is really different, and it is whole always the way it is. And here's, if I am worried about taking too long to become aroused or to orgasm, this can interfere with my arousal. And then we have, sometimes I feel so shy or self-conscious during sex that I cannot become fully aroused. And then I invite you to take 3 deeper breaths, connecting with whatever came up for you in these questions. And whenever you feel ready, adding up those numbers, writing down a total, and this is your cis scale number, so your sexual inhibitors number. And we'll get to talking a little bit about what those mean after we've completed the other ones. So getting to the excitors. So often just how someone smells can be a turn on. If this resonates with you completely and 100%, then you might be a 4 here. And if this is not something at all that you feel you have experienced, then a 0 or somewhere in between. And then seeing a partner doing something that shows his or her talent or intelligence, or watching them interacting well with others can make me very sexually aroused. Having sex in a different setting than usual is a real turn on for me. And when I think about someone I find sexually attractive or fantasize about sex, I become sexually aroused. So again, this is like if a sexual fantasy immediately kind of just gets you very aroused, you feel physical symptoms of arousal immediately and often, that might be sounding exactly like you. And if this is something that feels a little trickier, where it's like, sometimes not, you might be in between. If that never works for you, then that's not at all. And this one's a little weird. I think this one might apply a little bit more to people with monthly cycles, but of course, there are testosterone and our hormones affect ourselves, our sexual lives a lot, and our sexual arousal. And yeah, I think my main issue with this is just a little weirdly formulated, but yeah, if you are someone who knows that your hormones, when you are, for example, high in testosterone or when you're ovulating, that highly affects your sexual state, then you might put a 4 in there. If you know that your general baseline sexual arousal is actually not that much affected by your hormones, you might be lower on the scale. So and if this is something that you don't know, it might be something to investigate a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to give you a few more minutes here to complete this and start adding up the numbers of, oh wait, sorry, there's one more. Yeah. So I get very turned on when someone wants me sexually. So seeing lust in someone else's eyes or feeling desired is something that turns me on. If this sounds exactly like you, you're a 4. If this doesn't sound like you and it doesn't affect your arousal state very more from what you can remember, you might be a 0 or somewhere lower on the scale. And now I'm going to give you some time to add up those numbers. And so for the sexual inhibitory scale, so the first numbers that we added, If you're below a 7, you're low. If you're between 7 and 13, you're medium cis. And if you're 13 and above, you're high cis. And again, these are just numbers in the end, but just jot down if you ended up being low, medium, or high. And then for the sexual excitatory scale, you are going to be low if you're lower than an 8, medium if you're between 8 and 15, and then high if you're 15 and above. And so jot down what you got there. And then I invite you to just take a few moments to reflect on if this resonates with you, if this feels right for you. Again, it doesn't have to, right? This is just, again, a tool for you to gain deeper insight into your arousal states, your the way that your body reacts to different environmental triggers or accelerators and brakes. If you want to learn more about this, I highly recommend reading Emily Nagoski's book, or you can also just Google and learn more about this. I wanted to host this workshop because it's actually not that well known, and people think that there's no way to assess this often. But yeah, this is something that is used in quite a few research papers, etc., around the topics of sexuality. And so it can just be helpful to know. So most people, actually more than half people, kind of score medium on both the cis and ces scale. For instance, I scored high on both, and I've done this twice or 3 times now, and I score high every time. So I'm just sensitive, I think. So, if I get aroused really quickly, but I can also get turned off very quickly. But again, since I do this work, I'm able to kind of get into an arousal state quite quickly again. So this can happen quite fast, and I'm quite aware of it. But just remember, again, no matter what score you got, you are definitely not broken. Everything is perfect just the way it is. And I'm here for you in support. Remember, I do one-on-one sessions if you want to book a session with me, and I can help support you through any of this if anything felt hard or if you don't know how to move on. So yeah, that's it for today. I invite you to do something that feels really good for your nervous system in the last couple minutes here. So maybe grab some tea, maybe massage your feet, maybe light a candle, maybe continue journaling about this. And again, I know that these things can be really sensitive, but again, I am here for you. So much love, power, and grace to you, and I wish you a wonderful Monday. I will post the schedule for next week or next month soon. Expect an email, my monthly email, to come out on the 1st. And yeah, I also promise to get a little bit more transparent about which Mondays are maybe more about like delicious practices and which Mondays are more like worksheets. I try to be as transparent as possible in the schedule, but in general, the theme of these sessions are for people, they're designed for people who want to go deeper into their sexuality and look inwards so that you can have and feel more empowered in your everyday life and use your sexual energy and sovereignty as a means to empowerment and healing. So, yeah, I hope to see you next Monday.